Welcome back to Just Us Law, put on by Just Us Law Group. I'm Attorney Vincent, and I'm joined by Attorney Desilets. And we're going to talk this week about the Ethan Crumbley case, where both of his parents were actually charged with crimes, attempting to hold them accountable for his victims in a school shooting that actually happened in 2021 at the Oxford High School in Michigan. A 15-year-old boy engaged in a school shooting, took the lives of 4 innocent people, and both of his parents were charged, and the mother's trial recently concluded. I know, Attorney Desilets, you spent a fair amount of time following that trial.
Yes.
And just wondering what your observations were, what happened?
Yeah, so, well, first, the jury instructions were important to me because I wanted to understand how it is that the state of Michigan would hold this parent culpable. So there's a couple theories, which I know you're going to talk more about, on which to hold them accountable for the criminal actions of their children. But what was the evidence? So it was just mom's trial. Dad's going to be tried separately. And what's the evidence? I mean, some of the evidence was pretty damning against mom. We have a child, a 15-year-old boy, as you stated, who in the last year or so seemed to have declining mental health issues. Not a strong relationship with his mother. She seemed to spend a lot of time playing with her horses. She had some horses that she was boarding at a facility and would often go play with the horses when she wasn't working. She was the breadwinner of the home, so she was gone, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, and then off to the horses, if you will. And she also liked to have an occasional drink. And there were indications she was aware that her son was weird, that there were issues. There was text messages received by her of occasions where he was hearing voices and seeing things sort of fly about in the house. She was aware of a recent purchase of a gun for him for, I think it was Christmas, that the father had purchased for him, and then the house in itself had multiple guns, more than one, I think at least 4. We know that this gun safe code was 000, and they weren't all properly locked up. We know the home was pretty small. I think it was 900 square feet, single-level ranch home. There were some places in the home where there were bullet holes. We know this child had one friend, and really struggled in school to have other friends, but he had one friend who, right before this tragedy happened, had left the state of Michigan to go to some treatment facility for obsessive compulsive disorder. We know that Ethan had some pretty dark writings. He maintained a journal and made some pretty dark videos. I'm not sure if they were uploaded to YouTube, but on social media, including up to the day before he did it. Level of supervision in that home was perhaps a bit lacking, but we did have a 15-year-old, so trying to think what else was striking to me. The concerns that were shared with at least the mother from the school about pictures he had drawn the day of the shooting, which had a gun on it and some writings, but other things other concerns the school had shared in the days or weeks leading up to it. that actually weren't fully addressed by the school, but we know there were concerns brewing. And to me, I think that to me, I think, is the most striking evidence that I heard at trial.
So, typically, person commits a crime, they're culpable for it. And it's not typical, certainly not typical, to see a parent charged for a crime that their child committed. You hear about conspiracy to commit a crime where if two or more people are talking about a crime, they're maybe planning a crime, and at the end of the day, only one person actually carries out the crime, the other people who were knowledgeable about it, participated in planning it, are still potentially liable. But it seems like in this case, certainly there's no evidence that the parents were told directly that he planned to kill other students, correct?
Right. I mean, not that I know of, yeah.
And there's no evidence, to my knowledge, that they were directly involved in planning it or that they encouraged him to do it in some type of way. So that really got me, interested in what the laws are in Connecticut. What would happen in Connecticut? Would we ever see a case where a parent would be held culpable for the acts of their minor children? And there's actually a lot of chatter about that right now in Connecticut, certainly on lesser crime. I mean, the current crime here is motor vehicle theft, right? And we have juveniles stealing lots and lots of cars, causing lots of trouble. We even had a young person, sadly, tragically die after crashing a stolen car. And there's a lot of chatter online about where are the parents of those kids? What are the parents of those kids doing, and why aren't they being held accountable? And so I started looking into it a little bit. In Connecticut, and I think in most states, parents are responsible for the care and the control of their children. That's built into Connecticut law. When you give birth to a child, you're presumed responsible to control the child. And you think about that in the context of in a restaurant or in a store, to control your child. But there's actually bigger consequences there. The question then is, what happens if you fail to meet your obligation? And the only thing I could really find very clear is a civil liability for parents. And so a parent in Connecticut can be responsible for up to $5,000 worth of damage to other people's property. That's built into the statute. But it also that same statute also talks about being responsible for injury to others. And there's a mechanism for parents, and this is probably true in other states as well, to be brought into civil court, to be sued for damages, and there's no cap. That $5,000 is built into the statute, but there's other theories of liability that could be raised to get some additional damages out of that. But then that doesn't really address criminal culpability. So I started looking at some of our statutes relating to manslaughter, which, we have 2 degrees of manslaughter here in Connecticut. So theoretically, in Connecticut, if a person is reckless under the circumstances or exhibits an extreme indifference to human life, they can be charged with manslaughter in the 1st degree. And for a 2nd degree manslaughter, it doesn't have to be a complete disregard. It can just be reckless, to recklessly cause the death of another person. And I wonder if those are kind of the standards of proof, where do you think this case would have gone?
So those are the theories of liability that they did utilize, so that the Michigan statute embodies would be extreme, what did you say, extreme reckless disregard?
Extreme indifference to human life.
Extreme indifference. So yeah, it was I think it's one theory of liability was a reckless disregard, and then it was like a negligence based. So it's not totally the same, but it's similar. And with regards, so I haven't actually seen it utilized in Connecticut. I don't know if you were able to see if it in fact has been utilized. I'm not saying this was the wrong case to bring these criminal charges. I worry about the precedent this case might set going forward. Other states follow suit.
Okay. So I don't think that it ever has been. I don't think in Connecticut we've ever seen a parent charged for the actions of their child. I do recall a situation in Connecticut several years ago, probably maybe 15 or more years ago, where there was a tragic incident at a house party where a father had left children unsupervised around the New Year's holiday, and I do believe that there were some weapons involved, and whether or not those weapons had been properly stored, whether or not the child had gained access to the weapons.
I recall that, yes.
Inappropriately. But to the best of my knowledge, that person was not charged with actual murder or actual assault on a person, but more in relation to the storage of the guns. Yeah. But, what comes across to me in this question is, if you think about the trial that you saw and the evidence that was there about this young person with one friend and struggling and maybe hallucinating a little bit, seeing laundry flying about the house or whatever that was. How persuaded were you that this child did or didn't get the type of proper care that he needed? Or would that have made a difference? And was that an element of what the state tried to prove or not so much?
I don't think it was an element they had to prove, but I think they used it to go to the mother's overall negligence as a parent. And I kind of felt, on the one hand, it was strange. They were absolving the boy because he had the mental health issues and blaming the mother. But meanwhile, in the boy's own trial, he was a monster, right? So it was interesting to see him utilized, rhetorically. He's a monster in his own trial, but he's a poor boy who didn't get the mental health with the mom's trial. I think a lot of people were to blame for the failures here. I think there was a systems failure all across the board. I mean, from my perspective, and the day this happened was the day they called the parents in about this drawing he had done in a math class on his math paper with a gun and some writings. It was the same day he entered the school building with a gun, with the gun he used in his backpack, that went through hours of being in the facility before it was utilized. And that's just one point, just one instance of where, and I understand schools need some level of reasonable suspicion to search backpacks. I get it. But we're in an age where school shootings are rampant, right? To the point where we think if we don't speak their name into existence, that will stop the incidents, right? We don't actually use names anymore. We just say school shooter, which I don't know. I get it, but I don't know what that actually does. But I guess back to the point, I think there was multiple systems failures. There was definitely emails back and forth with members of the school body to the counselor that there were issues brewing here. And, certainly, I mean, the mother would get up and say, this was really ghosts. He wasn't really hallucinating or seeing things. Really, we played a game together, and he just mentioned ghosts and he really, in fact, wasn't hallucinating. So, I mean, I don't know where the truth lies. Clearly, from listening to the videos he made on social media about killing people before he did it, clearly there was something wrong. But anyway, right. I think that the parents hold the bulk of the blame in some regard. They had the weapons, but I also think we all failed this kid a little bit.
Right. You know, I've raised children. They're all grown. Some of the evidence, and I mean, I did watch a good portion of the trial, not all of it, but a good portion. I have some questions. So we know that he was writing a journal, as you said. Some pretty dark writings going on there in the journal. We have the social media postings that he was making, including, wasn't there a social media posting about the weapon itself?
I think the mother was posting those.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the son was posting.
Yeah. So we know he had some conversations with his friend. I know there was a lot of text message conversations that came into evidence, but as a parent in this day and age, okay, is it reasonable? Well, two questions. Is it reasonable to assume that the parent saw all of these writings, or even a portion of them, number one? Then number two, as a parent, if you allow your child on social media, or if you know that your child is keeping a journal, you know that your child is struggling in some way and that they're having private conversations with their friend, what's reasonably expected of you as a parent to know? And I say this recognizing that years ago, my youngest child had posted you can alter
You're not going to embarrass your son on TV, are you?
You can alter your image in anime form or cartoon form. And for a period of time, my child had posted himself as Santa Claus with a gun, you know?
With
And
a gun?
with a gun. And it didn't come across as dangerous to me, and certainly he didn't pose a danger to anybody, but in hindsight, that really could have come back to bite me had something occurred. So where's the line, or is there one?
Or even with the journals, like how much are you expected to invade their private space, right?
Right.
Where was this journal? But I mean, I think for me, the larger issue of culpability, and I'm still not sure if the jury got it right. I'm still not sure. The larger issue would be the access to the weapons, regardless of his mental status, right? Because even if this was just a well-functioning child, right? Accidents happen all the time. I went to school when I was in high school. Yes, an acquaintance shot their best friend and killed them by accident. So what level of danger are you introducing by not locking up the guns, by giving him free range, if not a school shooting? Oh, and there was some information about him killing animals too.
Yeah, the whole issue about access to guns is a whole other issue, right? I mean, that right there sets my situation apart. There's no guns in my home. We don't use guns, don't shoot them. There's no basis to believe anybody actually has a gun, right? Certainly out in the Detroit area, it's a different cultural expectation surrounding the guns. In fact, I think of the mother's jury, I think at least half of those jury members were gun owners or had guns in their home. A different culture. I mean, we certainly have gun ownership in Connecticut, but I don't think guns are as prevalent here as they maybe are in some other states. So that obviously sets.
So let me flip the question on you, Attorney Vincent. Do you think the jury got it right in this case?
I'm not 100% sure. I think we walk a very dangerous line where children are deemed less than fully culpable for their own conduct as of a certain age. I don't think parents have full control over their children. I think there's reasons why. There's an age of culpability, right? At 15 years old, certainly many 15-year-old children are outside the control of their parents. And I don't necessarily believe that every parent of a 15-year-old should be held accountable for the acts of that child. That said, you know, you and I have talked about this. I'm inclined to agree with you that if there is a level of parental negligence, of failure to carry out the actual duties of parenthood, to protect your child and raise your child, the failure to get this child proper health care and mental health care, the failure to, it seemed like he had an awful lot of time alone. Certainly parents have hobbies, parents have other things to do, but this child was actually home alone a lot. The evidence showed he was concerned about that. He was expressing discomfort at being alone. He was expressing fear of what was happening for him at home alone, looking for his parents, calling out to them. I think when you leave your child unattended and you don't provide them supervision or care under those facts, maybe the jury got it right. You have to be accountable. We don't set children to raise themselves.
We don't.
No. There has to be accountability.
But we actually don't know how much of that time, maybe perhaps the father was home. Because I know the father was home a lot more than the mother. It just seemed that he was more of an absent player, if you will. Because I know there was testimony that came out that she would be looking for him and he would be like, he's home, he's here, he's doing his homework. So, but certainly the mother was, you know, but that brings me to my question, which you and I have talked about, which is it's going to be interesting to see, assuming that the husband does not enter a plea based on the outcome of the wife's trial, whether we as society hold the father with gendered stereotypes that exist across systems, even in the law, right? We're talking a lot about moms, but whether we hold the father to the same standard that we hold the mother to. Not just the gun purchases, because we know that the father is the one who purchased the guns, right? But the level of supervision, surveillance, being the one to go to the school or not, being the one to set up the therapist appointment. It's going to be interesting for me to what degree we use the same evidence to do the same thing with the father. Do we hold him to the standard of a mother? And if we don't, there's a problem for me.
I find that question to be very, very interesting. I think the other question that I have about it is, you know, what was the purpose of the prosecution? And to any degree that the purpose of it was to deter or advise other parents that they could be criminally held liable for their child's conduct. But I do find it interesting. And so they were both arrested at the same time. They were both on the run, which the jury is aware of, so that speaks to some culpability there.
Do you think things might have come out differently? I can't help but think, had they not gone on the run.
It's very.
I think it was like the nail in the coffin for them that they took off.
It's very possible, and I don't know, you know, how these decisions are made. But her trial came first. The jury that she had is going to be entirely separate from the jury that he has. I'm not certain that we're going to have the same prosecutors. Definite certainty that the defense attorney will be different. How the case will be handled really remains to be seen. He may be afraid to have a trial.
Yeah, I was wondering if he would wait until her sentencing came, because that's a whole, before, in fact, he decided whether or not to enter a plea, you know. I don't know what manslaughter carries in Michigan, 4 counts of it, no less. So I was thinking he might be waiting for her sentencing. Do you know when she's going to be sentenced?
I do not know, but I do think, you know, going to your question, if assuming he doesn't enter a plea and take a deal, that trial will happen, and it will happen sooner than later. And it's entirely possible for her to be found guilty and for him to be found not guilty. And if that
will
arises,
raise all kinds of questions.
it will raise all types of questions about that different standard that we use in terms of how we view parents across the board in our society, the way we view mothers, the way we view fathers. In reality, it's changed a lot over time, but I think for many
has it
people,
really?
we still hold the mother accountable to a higher degree than we hold fathers for the condition and the day-to-day care of children. And I might be wrong about that.
No, I don't
But
think you are.
I definitely think it'll be interesting to watch for sure. So really appreciate our viewers for tuning in. It's a great privilege to be able to be here talking to you. We pride ourselves over at Vincent and Desilets Just Us Law Group on community involvement and education. These conversations about the law and justice and things of this nature are important conversations to have, and we're grateful that you chose to tune in to our show today, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Same place, same channel.
Same
Thank
place,
you.
same channel.
The Saybrook Fish House in Canton has been serving fresh seafood, chicken, and prime steaks for 40 years. Experience one of our 3 unique dining room settings, 2 with fireplaces, or relax in our cozy pub with a craft beer, wine by the glass, or specialty cocktail while enjoying a meal from our new lighter fare pub menu. Serving lunch and dinner Tuesday through Sunday. Reservations accepted for parties of 2 to 42. Gift cards always available. The Saybrook Fish House, nestled at the crossroads of routes 44, 202, and 179 in Canton.
I'm your host, Kurt Barwis. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Andrew Lynn.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Veterans Corner. My name's Chuck Wooden.
Decision for ourselves for this week if we want to be made well.
Hi, welcome to the crack of dawn. It's Dawn Lombardi. I'm starting the painting. It's going to be the clips with some water. Love it.
He took me on the sets of Lost in Space, Batman.
Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time.